I always used to tell my students at Santa Fe that history wasn't about dates, that they didn't have to memorize dates, but that it was about chronology. And I confessed to you guys a number of weeks ago that I had abandoned all sense of chronology in these little discussions. And so I thought about that, and I decided, I'll go back to the beginning. But those of you who are not historians probably can't appreciate the conflict with those words, the beginning, with any kind of historical topic. So I decided to go back to where I began. And any of you who remember my discussion of the Stephen Foster neighborhood might recall me saying, you should look at the abstracts of your own property if you live inside the city. So I decided there are two beginnings, and I will do one of them today, and then next time I appear, you'll get the other beginning. And they intertwine a little today. But if you live inside the city of Gainesville and you ever look at the abstract of your property, the first words you see are the words Arredondo Grant, okay? And I have to confess that I was stupid about this. I'm a native Floridian. I understand that St. Augustine is the oldest city in the United States. I understand the Spanish history of the state of Florida. So when I looked at those words, Arredondo Grant, I thought, from the 1500s maybe, or the 1400s, or maybe even the 1300s, if you go to the fort at St. Augustine. Well, it turns out the Arredondo Grant was not about that at all. And in fact, it was a clever political move on the part of the Spanish government between 1817 and 1818. That is the date where the Arredondo Grant comes from. And what the Arredondo Grant is about is this. In 1819, the U.S. and Spain signed a treaty that gave the United States control of Florida for the first time. And seeing that coming up, the King of Spain decided that he wanted all the land in Florida to be in private hands because the Louisiana Purchase had honored all titles and land claims that had been given in that territory before the purchase actually happened. So the King of Spain woke up and he said, I think I'll give Florida to my family and friends. And that's where the Arredondo Grant came from. It was given to two brothers who were cousins, basically, of the Spanish monarchy. So that's how the Arredondo Grant came to be. In 1819, that treaty was signed, and it appeared, because the rule was you follow international law, that the Spanish king had it correctly. What he did not count on was Andrew Jackson, who really, if you like history, read about Jackson. Quite extraordinary. So Jackson, of course, wanted Florida for farmlands for his constituency, lower class white males coming in from other parts of the South. And so at his urging, the U.S. Congress passed a piece of legislation that said no land grants in any area that we acquire that are put in place after 1804 are going to be honored at all. Okay, the Arredondo Grant was 1817. So what happened was the owners of the 289,645 acres of land that stretched over all of Alachua County, Levy County, and part of Marion County, did a very American thing. They decided to sue. And actually, the United States versus Arredondo was one of the most famous court cases of the 1830s. The actual claims weren't settled until after 1900. But ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court found for the Arredondos, and the land and the profits from the sale of the land ultimately went to the Arredondo family in Spain, but not for about another 50 years. In the meantime, another beginning, by 1824, 14 people, 14 countable white males, were living in Hogtown. And by the time the Arredondo claims were settled, the people who had settled Hogtown had stretched out all over Alachua County, and there was no Spanish influence left. And the other piece of the story that comes whenever I see you again is in the court case, the discussion of the Arredondo Grant says the Arredondos took possession of abandoned Seminole land. That's the exact words, abandoned Seminole land. So when I see you next, I'll talk to you about the abandonment of the Arredondo Grant.